In this video, you're going to learn all about osteoporosis and menopause. In more detail, here's what you can expect to learn. First of all, we'll discuss what is the link between osteoporosis and menopause. That's both menopause at the average age of 51, but also early menopause and premature menopause, and how do those affect your risk of fractures. Then I'll show you where you can get some resources, what exercise, nutrition, and supplements to reverse osteoporosis if you already have it. But before we dive in, who am I? My name is Igor. I'm the author of the books of the Amazon books called Osteoporosis Reversal Secrets, as well as Mastering Menopause. If you want to learn how you can get those books on Amazon, just click on the link in the description below. As well, I've been a personal trainer since 2006 with specialties in osteoporosis and menopause. I've also been training other personal trainers by speaking at some of the world's largest personal training conferences since 2013, and I've delivered over 400 wellness presentations to some of Canada's largest corporations, including IBM, Bosch, American Express, University of Toronto, Investors Group, and others. If you want to learn when I publish more videos about osteoporosis, menopause, exercise, nutrition, and supplements, click like and subscribe to my channel. So let's dive in. What is the link between osteoporosis and menopause? First, let's discuss what happens to bone strength as a typical result of maturation as well as aging. Bone strength, density, mass, etc., starts to increase from the time you're born and increases all the way until it stops increasing between the ages of 18 to 32, depending on a bunch of different factors, including genetics, lifestyle, and more. So that's when it peaks, but it doesn't decline right away. It plateaus for about 10 to 20 years. So it stays about the same until the ages of 40 to 45. After that, it starts to slowly drop until you reach premenopause and eventually menopause, and it's a slow drop. After menopause, there is a pretty fast drop for a few years as the estrogen levels really drop. And finally, once the estrogen levels have stabilized at a low level, the bone loss continues at a slow level. But basically, bone loss starts to happen at about age 40 to 45. That's what happens with an average menopause or menopause at the average age, which is 51. What happens with early menopause? Well, to explain what happens with early menopause, we have to define what is early menopause. There's an official definition. The definition is menopause between the ages of 40 to 44. And here is one study that looks at the effects of early menopause. It's titled Effect of Early Menopause on Bone Mineral Density and Fractures. What I really like about this study is that it actually looks at fractures, not bone mineral density, which is just a test that isn't 100% reflective of fractures. This directly looks at fractures. So here is what fractures look like at an average menopause at 51 versus early menopause between 40 and 45. So the number of fractures is about 50% higher in early menopause before the age of 70. But again, if it's before the age of 70, that means that the early menopause group just had more time in menopause to get to 70. So next, let's discuss premature menopause as well as osteoporosis. Premature menopause is not the same as early menopause. What is premature menopause? Premature menopause is menopause before the age of 40, either naturally or due to a hysterectomy. And so here's the study that also looks at fracture risk. It's titled Bone Health in Women with Premature Ovarian Insufficiency or Early Menopause. So in this study, women were followed for 23 years, okay? And here is the percent of women who experienced a fracture over this 23-year follow-up period. Those who experienced at least one fracture and they went through menopause at the average age of 51, about 22.8% of them experienced a fracture over the following 23 years. In other words, if they started at 51, 23 years later, they were 74. If they had premature menopause, over the next 23 years, 31.2% of them experienced fractures. The average age of menopause in this study of women who went through premature menopause is 38. But again, it says this was a 23-year follow-up period, which means that the 51-year-olds would have been 74 at the end of the study. The 38-year-olds would have been only 61 at the end of the study. So just as I mentioned, so up until the age of 61, the early menopause group experienced more fractures. What if they follow them until they're the same age, until 74. How many more fractures would the early menopause group experience if they had an additional 13 years, which they do? It would be a lot more, okay? And so let's stop talking about the problem and start talking about the solution. What are the exercises, nutrition, and supplements that we need to take into account when it comes to osteoporosis reversal, when it comes to decreasing the risk of a fracture? And so when it comes to exercise, you need to know a number of different variables. First of all, the most obvious, which is what you're thinking about. Which exercises should you do? You also want to know what I call the exercise prescription. That is how many sets, how many repetitions, how much weight, as what tempo, and how many days per week. These are all variables that you need to know in order to make an exercise program. The exercises themselves are not enough. It's one thing to do squats twice a week. It's another thing to do them 3 times per week. It's another thing to do squats with a heavyweight versus a lightweight. They all have different effects on the body. And if the goal is bone strengthening, you need a very specific protocol for bone strengthening. Fortunately, I have a full video, very thorough 12-minute video that discusses specifically how to do strength training to lower your fractures and reverse your osteoporosis. You also want to know about nutrition, okay? What kind of things do you need to know? That is, which nutrients should you eat, as well as how much? And by the way, I have a video on that as well, titled Calcium for Osteoporosis, question mark. The reason there's a question mark is because I'll give you a hint right now. Calcium does not strengthen bones. It does not lower your fracture risk. And if you're thinking, well, I knew that, it's vitamin D. Vitamin D doesn't do that either. So this video goes into why calcium and vitamin D don't actually work to strengthen your bones and what is the single most important nutrient to improve bone strength and the best foods for getting that one nutrient. Lastly, you also want to know about supplements. And when it comes to supplements, you need to know variables like which ones to take. After all, there is a lot of material out there. There are a lot of supplements out there on the market. Some are good, some are bad, and some we just don't know. And so in my book, I discuss which supplements are effective, in other words, proven in people, not mice, rats, or petri dishes, disproven, in other words, we know that they don't work, and lastly, unproven. There's no research one way or the other. So we want to know which supplements are in each category. And to account for that, I actually have another video about osteoporosis symptoms and treatments without medications. If you like this video, click like and subscribe. Thank you and goodbye.